Hey, folks. This is Jesse Cope, back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are, and whatever part of the day you're in. I sure do appreciate y'all joining me, giving me a little bit of your time and a little piece of your day. I will try and use it wisely. Hopefully, I will. Hopefully, it gives us something, some extra tools for our toolbox, as we used to say in the Marine Corps, and hopefully, it helps each of us draw a little bit closer to God and Jesus Christ and our nation as a whole to turn back to God and Jesus Christ, even if just a little bit. For those of y'all who continue to share the podcast with others, tell other people about it. Thank y'all. You help the podcast to spread. And for those of y'all that continue to pray for me and for the podcast, thank you so much. Very, very grateful. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for you, Father, and your Son, Jesus Christ, and your Holy Spirit. Thank you for your love and your mercy, your grace and your forgiveness. Thank you that our names are written in your book of life because of your Son, Jesus Christ, and that despite our failings and our sins, Father, we can have assurance, trust in you and your Son, and the fact that one day we will get to spend eternity with you in heaven, where there will be no more tears or sadness or sorrow. Thank you for the people that listen to the podcast and share it. Be with them, be with their families. Surround us with your angels, Father. Protect us from evil of any kind. Guide our steps, be a lamp unto our feet, a light unto our path. Give us the wisdom to see what you want us to do and the courage to act on it. Watch over those who are hurting, Father, whether they're sick or injured or alone, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual. Calm their anxieties, calm their fears. Give them your peace. Help those of us who can to be a light to them, to show them a little bit of your Son, Jesus Christ. Help us to trust you, Father, even when we don't understand what's going on. Be with our farmers and our ranchers, those who provide our food. Give them success and bounty. Be with those who work on our infrastructure, our roads, bridges, power lines, telephone and internet lines, connection. Keep them safe. Give them strength and health and wisdom. Bring them home safe to their families. And guide my words here, Father, please. In your Son's name we ask and pray. Amen. Have you made time for God today? Is he the top of your priority list? Is he in the middle? Is he at the bottom? Is he even on it? Do you go to church? Do you go to church on Sunday or Saturday or Wednesday or whenever it is that you can? Do you actually listen to what the pastor's saying? And do you apply it to your life? Or do you walk in and sit for 30, 40, 50 minutes or an hour and walk out and never think about it again? Used to have a pastor, I tell this often, a great, great pastor, one of the best I've had in my life. And he always talked about that. He always talked about one of his goals was to make the sermon on Monday morning applicable. Because he said, if all you're doing is coming here and listening to me once a week, and the other 6 days of the week you completely check out of being a Christian, he said, I'm not doing my job, and neither are you. And if you're married, folks? Does your spouse know it? Do you act like it? Are they your top priority? That's your one person out of all the billions of people. Do you treat them like that? Do you treat them like a treasure like that? Like they're the only one? Or would we treat a briefcase with $1 million in it better than we treat our spouse? Do we treat our phone better, more lovingly than we treat our spouse? Are we more concerned with where it is? Do we touch it more often? Do we look at it more often? Do we listen to it more often? Just some thoughts, folks. All right. One last. Always remember, if you're married, this is true even if you're not, as far as people watching your example, but if you're married and you have kids, realize that they're looking at your marriage as an example of what to expect in their own. I had a friend of mine recently send me something talking about the effect of fathers on daughters and how much the actions of fathers set their daughters up for their own marriage and who to expect, what to expect in a man. If they were loving, kind, caring, affectionate, if they touched them often with hugs, gave them kisses, were kind to them, sat there with them, versus if they didn't do that stuff, that was who that daughter was going to look for. So a little bit of pressure there, gentlemen. If you are the father of a daughter, uh, not that there's not pressure if you're the father of a son, just a different kind here. I threatened this for a while, and I think we're going to go back and do it. We read through Proverbs last year, and I think we're going to go ahead and take some time and read through a Proverbs, a chapter each day now on the podcast this year. It was a book, folks, for me as an adult when I was really trying to get back into reading the Bible consistently. That was a great help. And I know a lot of people, when you ask them, they say, well, where do you start reading the Bible? And they'll talk about John, maybe, or one of the Gospels. Great places. I'm not talking against that. I'm just saying that some of y'all out there, this might work for y'all too. It worked for me. It's interesting. There was a editor of a Bible that I was given back in high school. Editor happened to be, I think, a Marine and maybe a good friend of another Marine, which would make sense. We're all so weird. We kind of have to stick together if we want to have any friends. But one of them made the comment that there's 31 chapters a day, there's 31 days in a month. Read a chapter a day. And that every bit of wisdom that they really had in their life had come from doing that. So we're going to start with chapter 1, verse 1, the usefulness of Proverbs. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The enticement of sinners. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are a graceful wreath to your head and ornaments about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie and wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole as those who go down to the pit. We will find all kinds of precious wealth. We will fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path. For their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. Indeed, it is useless to spread the baited net in the sight of any bird. But they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its possessors. Wisdom warns. Wisdom shouts in the street. She lifts her voice in the square. At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. At the entrance of the gates, in the city, she utters her sayings. How long, O naive ones, will you love being simple-minded? And scoffers delight themselves in scoffing, and fools hate knowledge. Turn to my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit on you. I will make my words known to you. Because I called and you refused. I stretched out my hand and no one paid attention. And you neglected all my counsel and did not want my reproof. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your dread comes. When your dread comes like a storm and your calamity comes like a whirlwind. When distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would not accept my counsel. They spurned all my reproof. So they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be satiated with their own devices. For the waywardness of the naive will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But he who listens to me shall live securely and will be at ease from the dread of evil. Every time I read through Proverbs, especially if it's a new Bible that I'm going through, I try and underline some verses. And the more I go through Proverbs, the more I find myself underlining, it seems like every other verse. But there's a couple here. Verse 7, I think, is the most important. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. There's nothing wrong with being afraid of God. I think today a lot of us view being afraid of someone as always, without exception, being a negative trait. I remember being afraid of my father as a young boy, and my mother too, for that matter, when I was really young. And that kept me from doing a lot of stupid stuff. I did enough stupid stuff anyway. You can ask some of the people that have known me in my life. So it did save me from everything. But all the more reason to appreciate it because it did save me from something. That's the same type of relationship with God. And I should have added there, I know without a doubt, and I always knew without a doubt, that my parents loved me dearly. That fear never caused any doubt in my young mind. And we do a disservice to fellow Christians, people who are new Christians, new believers, seekers, to try and make God out to be this fluffy, cuddly teddy bear that there's nothing dangerous about there's nothing to be feared. Thomas Jefferson's quote was far more on point about knowing that God was a just God and that his justice couldn't sleep forever, and that made him tremble, as in tremble with fear for his country. We should be trembling today, some folks. Really, we should be trembling a lot for our country based on what we've been doing for the last century, especially the last 50 years of abortion and LGBTQ lifestyles and no fault divorce, and the list goes on. Feminism. But fearing the Lord, folks, Proverbs is telling you right here, that's the beginning of knowledge. And only fools despise wisdom and instruction. So we're going to spend a couple days, and we do this every so often. We could spend a lot of days talking about education. And I guess we kind of do every day, hopefully, and that we educate ourselves a little bit. But we're going to talk a little bit for the next day or two about the relationship of the Bible and American education early on. Because today, if you ask most Americans what the relationship of the Bible and American education was, they would say, well, nothing. The Bible shouldn't have any place in American education. And that's just a comment born out of the success of the propaganda of the left, and an ignorance of actual history. And so we'll get into it. Yale, right? A lot of these are Ivy League schools. Yale College, established in 1701. So 3/4 of a century, give or take, before we were a nation, right? So it was around for a while already. Said that every student shall consider the main end of their study to work to know God in Jesus Christ, and answerably to lead a godly, sober life. That was the goal of Yale. That the main end of their study, of their education, was to know God in Jesus Christ and to lead a godly, sober life. How different would American public education look today if that was the goal? The College of William and Mary, founded in 1693. The goal was to supply Virginia with a seminary of ministers so that the Christian faith might be propagated, spread. That reminds me, excuse me, folks, of one of the goals of Columbus that we talk about each year for about a week around Columbus Day. His voyages and the goals, what he saw, what he actually did, because there's so much outright lying about Columbus today. And that was one of the goals, was for the Christian faith to be propagated, to be spread, right? And to supply the church with ministers. Again, College of William and Mary. Again, how different would public education look today if one of its main goals was to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ? And you have to remember, folks, that we were founded as a Christian nation, right? So when you go to China today, which is a communist nation that's very antagonistic toward religion in general, Christianity in particular, and persecutes pretty much any religion, because their religion is the state. And so their schools promote that religion, the state, because they're a communist state. And so they promote that. If you go to Iran, right, a Muslim nation with Muslim schools, what do those schools promote? Islam. That's the point of those schools because that country is founded on that religion. Whatever your country, whatever values it was founded on, if you want those to continue, then your education of your children has to support that, has to encourage that, has to continue that. And if I can find this real quickly, there's a quote by Benjamin Rush. I thought it was Noah Webster, but I was wrong. That talks about the purpose of education. Well, I can't find the quote I want, but I'm going to read you a different one. Contemplating merely the political institutions of the United States, I lament that we waste so much time and money in punishing crimes and take so little pains to prevent them. We profess to be Republicans, and yet we neglect the only means of establishing and perpetuating our Republican forms of government. That is, the universal education of our youth and the principles of Christianity by means of the Bible. For this divine book, above all others, favors that equality among mankind, that respect for just laws, and all those sober and frugal virtues which constitute the soul of republicanism. There's another quote that I can't find right now, folks, but it talks about the fact that the whole point of the Republican form of government is liberty. But you can't, and the only way to assure liberty is Christianity, is morality, right? And religion. And so these other countries, China, communism, that's what they teach their children. Iran, Islam, that's what they teach their children. You can look across the world and see, and it makes sense, right? If you run a company, a business, whatever that company produces, whatever product it offers, you're gonna teach, educate your employees in such a way to promote that product, right? And so if your product as a nation is liberty, which is the way our founding fathers tried to set our country up, then you're going to do whatever you need to promote that product, to sell that product, and that product is liberty. And the only way to do that is to teach them the Bible. Uh, King's College, right? We were just talking about Samuel Johnson, who was president of King's College, known though as Columbia University, said that their purpose was to inculcate upon students' tender minds the great principles of Christianity and morality. Princeton, one of its founding goals or statements, cursed is all learning that is contrary to the cross of Christ. So, how did we get where we are today? A quote from Noah Webster here, real quick, who was considered the father of American education. Right? This is 1836. In my view, the Christian religion is the most important and one of the first things in which all children under a free government ought to be instructed. No truth is more evident to my mind than that the Christian religion must be the basis of any government intended to secure the rights and privileges of a free people. If I can find it real quickly. I don't know if I can. Yeah, Harry Truman. The fundamental basis of this nation's laws was given to Moses on the Mount. The fundamental basis of our Bill of Rights comes from the teachings we get from Exodus and St. Matthew, from Isaiah and St. Paul. If we don't have a proper fundamental moral background, we will finally end up with a totalitarian government which does not believe in rights for anybody except the state, right? That ties in pretty well to Noah Webster. If we don't base the teaching of our children on Christianity, then we can't have a free government, and we're not going to secure the rights and privileges of a free people. So how did we get to the point today where we're so far astray from the obvious intent of our founders in keeping God, not the church, folks? They didn't want a particular church associated with institutions and the government, but the principles, the general principles of Christianity. Well, we talk about this guy probably about once a year. His name's John Dewey. He's considered the architect of modern education in America. And this is a quote from him: "There is no God and there is no soul. Hence, there are no needs for the props of traditional religion." And one of the things we talk about each year is out of his 1929 book, talking about the goal of education, public education, was to separate children from God and their family, right? He was a very big proponent of the socialist, communist schools over in Soviet Russia. And so that's how we got to this point, right? 1947 Supreme Court decision, Everson versus Board of Education, talked about separation of church and state, but what it really meant was separation of God and state. And so what we're going to do, we're going to kind of continue this uh, a little bit more today, and then we'll go into tomorrow. Is just keep. We're going to read through a little bit more in depth about Harvard. I've got a little more information on Harvard than the others, and so the goal of Harvard. A lot of this is coming out of America's God and Country Encyclopedia of Quotations by William J. Federer. But you can find a lot of this information in the American Patriots Bible by Dr. Richard Lee, and also in the Founders Bible edited by David Barton and the Wall Builders Association. You can also find this stuff online, folks. You just got to dig a little bit for it sometimes. The Avalon Project out of Yale is a good source. There's another one that I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but there's a couple good internet sources out there. But one of the original purposes of Harvard University, which was founded in 1636, was to train clergy, right? You go back and you look at schools and hospitals, a huge number of them were founded by Christians with the express purpose of tying that education or that healing into those principles of Jesus Christ and applying those principles of Christ or spreading the gospel of Christ, right? And so there's some rules and precepts. I think we'll probably go over those tomorrow. We go over them once or twice a year, but just a couple more little quips from Harvard just to give you an idea about where the education in our nation really started. All knowledge without Christ was vain, right? The college seal, Veritas, meant divine truth. The official motto of Harvard at one point was "For Christ and the Church." And you can still see that on one of the walls near the entrance to campus. A dedication in one of the old catalogs, right, at Harvard Divinity School. After God had carried us safe to New England, and we had builded our houses, provided necessaries for our livelihood, reared convenient places for God's worship, and settled the civil government. One of the next things we longed for and looked after was to advance learning and perpetuate it to posterity, dreading to leave an illiterate ministry to the churches when our present ministers lie in the dust. And I think tomorrow we'll maybe try and read through this comment of Samuel Langdon also, who was president of Harvard. But for today, that's enough. Folks, we're a long way from where we should be. Our education needs to be centered around God and the Bible and the principles, general principles of Jesus Christ, not any particular denomination, right? Separation of church and state, but not separation of God and state. God bless y'all. God bless your marriages if you're married. God bless your families. God bless America. God bless your nation, wherever you are around the world listening. We'll talk to y'all again real soon, folks. Looking forward to it.